Hey, what's up, guys? I know it's fucking dark, but it's fucking early morning. And, yeah, I was thinking about this, singer guy, Cornell, committing suicide. And this is something I've thought of before, but it always just, every time one of these big name celebrities kills themselves, it's particularly unsettling and disturbing. To me, anyways. It's like when Robin Williams died. It was like, what? I thought you were the happiest motherfucker on earth. You know, wealthy, funny, always in an apparently positive mood. And then you fucking kill yourself? Like, really, dude? Seriously? And I always get this feeling when these big name people die of like betrayal. I feel betrayed, and I know people might say, oh, that's selfish. But isn't it interesting that a common thing people say about suicide is that it's selfish? The living love to categorize suicidal people as selfish because they leave behind their family, because they check out of life early while the rest of us have to continue living in this drama, this perpetual challenge drama called life. So people would call people who commit suicide selfish. But I do feel like it's almost like a betrayal, and I guess the reason I feel betrayed is because it's like, I feel like there needs to be a purpose to life in order to justify continue living life. And when a person commits suicide, it almost gives credence to this idea that life is purposeless. And at any point you can just check out. You know, you can just check out, commit suicide, and fuck it. And I feel like it's a betrayal of everything we as a society and a culture agree upon to justify our purpose in life, to justify having a purpose to live, to keep living. So it annoys me because me, I've been a very introspective person for a large part of my life. And I do think about life. I do wonder, what's the purpose of life? Why are we here? What's the point of waking up every day and going through the routines and the processes of life in a world that could sometimes be very vicious? And I know this might sound like a depressing video, but I don't like depressing shit. So by the time we're done, don't worry, I'm gonna loop this package video up with a nice little optimistic little bow on the package, optimistic little final tone. So if it sounds depressing, don't worry, I'm gonna fucking make it optimistic. Cause I don't believe in depression and life is so bad. Cause honestly, it scares me, that sort of depressiveness. Seeing someone like Cornell being at a point where he thinks it's justified to end his own life. That shit, like, it disturbs me to see that. It's very disturbing that a person could ever get to such a point. So yeah, I mean, we live in a world where, it's sort of a repetitive process, and it could be a vicious world, where people get hit by cars, and, bad shit happens to good people. You can get, raped and murdered by some random fucker. Your whole family could die in a car crash. Like sometimes bad shit could happen in this world. And, in a way, everything is impermanent. Everybody dies eventually. And, it's very easy to start going down that rabbit hole of what's the point of life? Why are we here? Why keep living? So when somebody who has it all, like a Robin Williams or a Cornell, well, maybe not all. They obviously didn't have a sense of emotional happiness. But they had all the external physical stuff. They had the money, they had the fame, they had the reputation, they had the accomplishments. When somebody like that ends their life, it's like a betrayal of the story society tells itself on why we should continue living. But the truth is, we don't really know why these people end their lives. We don't know why Robin Williams ended his life. We don't know why Chris Cornell ended his life. You know? So I think it's maybe a bit of a fallacious argument on my point to attribute my own anxieties about suicide, my own reaction to seeing big name celebrities kill themselves, and saying this is why I think it's disturbing, when they had their own reasons. And who knows? I mean, it could have been depression. It could have been, we don't know why. We don't fucking know why. I like to think that there's a reason to live your life as long as you can. I like to think that you shouldn't just end your life for no fucking reason. But, well, yeah, I mean, there is no but. It's just that. Yeah, it's like we're here. We're alive. We don't know why we're here. We don't understand the point of this life. We don't understand, the ultimate reason we're here. Life is a pretty big fucking mystery. And, what do you do with that mystery? What do you do with that uncertainty? What do you do with this gaping hole of just existential question marks? So I guess I feel like, I feel like if we don't know why we're here, if we don't know the purpose of life, one thing I do know is that I'm alive. I may not know why we're here, ultimately. I may not know if there's a God or some ultimate explanation for the fucking creation of the universe, the reason the universe exists. I may not be able to have an ultimate explanation of why do we go through the everyday routines and processes of life. Is there a purpose to it? Why do we go through suffering in life? I don't have an explanation for that. But I think it's kind of foolish to let those uncertainties, those existential questions, which are all based on this vacuous void of empty speculation, because there's no answer to these questions. I think it's foolish to let those existential questions take a higher priority over life itself. So in other words, I may not know why we're here, what the purpose of our life is, but I do know that I am here. I do know that I am part of this physical reality. I do know that I am part of this daily drama called life. And I think it would be silly for someone to consider ending their own life, or saying, oh, there's no point to life, just because you can't answer conceptual questions in your mind, speculating about why and what's the purpose and the point. So when you see that kind of contrast between the hard fact of reality versus the existential anxieties you might have about why we're here, I honestly, I just feel like I feel like it's important to prioritize what you can be certain of rather than what you're uncertain of. And I'm definitely more certain that I'm alive in this drama called life than I am of these, inverse negative questions that have no real bearing on this reality. That said, though, I do think we as a society need to remove the stigma of suicide and death. You know, some people are going to end their lives. It's probably going to be inevitable. There's always going to be some people who end their lives by suicide. And I think, you know, what's more inhumane? Giving people the option to go to a medical institution and be euthanized under their own volition, under their choosing, or Chris Cornell asphyxiating himself with a band around his neck on a bathroom floor in a hotel by himself. Tell me, what's more inhumane? To me, the answer is pretty clear. And I think as a society, we may not like to face the idea of death. We may not like to talk about death and suicide. But I think it's foolish to think that every single person on the planet is going to want to live till they're 80, 90 years old. I think it's foolish. And as a result, I think that we should legalize euthanasia. We should give people free, restricted, regulated, but we should give, not free like cost free. I meant free as in the freedom to get it. We should give people free access, not free financially, just free to like choose it, access to euthanasia. It shouldn't be this taboo shit that people got to do on a bathroom floor with a fucking belt around their neck. Shouldn't be that way. Honestly, I think part of the reason that society and culture in general is so hostile to the idea of, you know, legalizing euthanasia is because, or assisted suicide, whatever you're going to call it, is because we fear death. We fear the topic. And I think in our minds we kind of think, well, if we legalize suicide, if we allow it, openly allow it in our society, doesn't that invalidate the narrative of life? Doesn't that invalidate society's narrative? Excuse me. Doesn't that invalidate the narrative of life? So I think that's part of the reason that we don't want to legalize euthanasia. Is that we're afraid that we live in a very ambitious culture of work hard, have lofty goals, be ambitious, make money, build up wealth in this material reality, very materialistic life. And what could be more opposed to materialism than death, which is the literal dissolution, the dissolving of your own material self, death. So yeah, I think as a culture we need to embrace euthanasia. It's far more humane to give people an option to end their lives if they want to, than to, you know, have them fucking, you know, lie down on a fucking train track or some shit. So, I promised this video would end on a lighter note, and I'm gonna do that. Because I honestly, I have an anxiety reaction to the thought of suicide. It almost angers me. Because it's like, well, what the hell? I mean, these people are just checking out of life. I mean, it's such a contradiction of life. Suicide is such a contradiction of life. It's such a betrayal of waking up every day and doing what you're doing, that it kind of angers me whenever I hear these stories in the news. So, I mean, all I would say to end this is that, you know, I'm not going to say that Chris Cornell didn't have his reasons for committing suicide. Obviously, people who do it must have a reason for it. Or maybe it's a lack of reason. Maybe some people commit suicide because they feel there's no reason to life. There's no point of living. So maybe depression and suicide is an illness caused by an obsession with existential speculation. You know, why are we here? What's the point? What are we doing? Questioning into the void, the blank void of uncertainty. I mean, I'm sure there's some people who commit suicide for that reason. I mean, clearly, the logic when you commit suicide must be there's no point in living anymore. Either because you're suffering, or you're anxious, or you're depressed about something, and you say, wow, this is miserable, what's the point in continuing? And you end it. Some would argue that the point is to overcome your depression. Some would argue the point is to find out what's causing it. Now, according to the mainstream model, the mainstream medical model, there's no free will involved in depression. It's just genetics. It's just your brain acting out chemical imbalance. I'm not going to say that's not true, but it certainly is a predeterministic model that says you have no control over it. There's no subjective paradigm shift that you can have internally, mentally, cognitively that could cure your depression. At best, you can take pills that alter the chemical state of your brain. But you can't, subjectively, like this idea that, oh, well, if you're depressed, maybe there's a reason. Maybe you have some irrational belief. Oh, you're anxious, maybe there's a reason. Maybe 5 years ago, who knows? Like 5 years ago, you were watching the local news and there was this story about, fucking the dangers of seatbelts failing in cars. And maybe you were in a vulnerable state at the time. Maybe you just gotten out of work and you were fucking tired as shit and you hadn't eaten all day. You're just sitting on your couch and you're watching this local news story with the fucking terrifying background music and the narrator narrating seatbelts failing everywhere. You may be next. The statistical odds of dying if you're in a car crash, if your seatbelt fails. And you're like, ooh. And you start to get scared and you have this anxiety and then you're like, whatever, I gotta go eat something. You go and you eat and now you gave yourself pleasure from the anxiety by eating. And without even realizing it, you just created an association between eating, the pleasure of eating, and numbing a fear. And since you never really addressed the fear of seatbelt failure, now you've created a couple problems. Now you've probably created a subconscious impulse where every time you feel anxious, specifically about seatbelt failing, you go to food to make yourself feel better, and you don't even realize it. And second, since you never really sat down and really processed the anxiety of seatbelt failures, that's going to be embedded in you deep down. And next time you get in a car, for the rest of your life, there might be an underlying little worry. And that underlying worry could build up over years. Or every time you're driving 5 hours a day to work for an hour in your morning commute, you don't even realize it, but you're biting your nails and you don't even notice it. You're biting your fucking nails because deep down, subconsciously, buried beneath the pleasure, when you numbed the anxiety out by eating a fucking donut because you were hungry after work, a stressful day at work, you're biting your nail in the car because you're freaking anxious. Because deep down you have this subconscious fear you didn't address, you didn't look at, face it, and then accept it for what it is, and accept the fact that you can't do anything about it. I know that's scary, but there's liberation in 100% acceptance and realizing you can't control everything. And who knows, this anxiety could build up over time, and it stacks on different things, and it stacks and it stacks on and it stacks on. The point is, this is just an example of how depression and anxiety may be caused by mental processes that isn't just a chemical imbalance, but could be caused by interpretations, super subjective things here. I know science doesn't like subjectivity. They're interested in the objective reality, the physical objective reality. Science hates subjectivity because it's almost impossible to measure. How do you measure someone's interpretation of an event? Where the fuck is that happening in the brain? They haven't found subjectivity yet. They haven't found consciousness yet. So, there are very subjective things going on that could play a role in mental health. And I don't even remember what the point of this fucking tangent was, but I think that's just a good point to make anyways. That there may be subjective elements, and it may not just be external factors, physical factors, objective factors like fucking chemical imbalance. I'm not saying that the chemical imbalance theory is wrong. I'm just saying there might be more to the story. So anyways, to put a positive note on the end of this is this: I think that I hate the idea of suicide. It actually gives me a bit of anxiety when I hear some shit like Robin Williams killed himself. And I just want to get this video out there for you guys. What's the point of life? Why are we here? Is life pointless? I don't know, man. But what I do know is that it's kind of silly to prioritize a void of speculative nothingness just to, questions about the purpose of life. It's kind of strange to me to prioritize that over the undeniable reality around us, this thing called life. And I'm just not giving up. Maybe I don't understand what it's like to be in Chris Cornell's shoes or Robin Williams' shoes and to be massively depressed. Maybe I just don't know what that's like. But I don't like the idea of giving up on life. I don't like that idea. Like, I get it. Life can be a pointless struggle sometimes. I get it. Life can be a meaningless fucking struggle sometimes. I get it. But, yeah, I guess that's what it comes down to, right? And this is a question that has eluded people for millennia. What's the point of life? Why are we here? I don't know what the point of life is. I just know that committing suicide is far worse than living life. Okay? Oh, woe is me, and life is such a terrible drama, so I'm going to do something terrible to myself to end the terrible drama. I don't know, man. Something about the logic, I'm not getting it. Anyways, thanks for watching. I know it was a long video. If you enjoy my content, support me on Patreon. Check me out there. Put a link to some of my awesome t-shirts. And thank you guys for watching.